Sorry guys, I have been gone way too long on minis. They released another mini wave before I even got to minis 6, so I'll be doing number 7 in a week or two. So we've actually got quite a few minis now, not to mention a few new minis that I've actually really wanted. So before this, we had 5 sets of 6 cats each, and 1 set of reprint minis with different models. This is a grand total of 36 little vinyl cats that I had in a little box. These last 2 sets became so many minis that I could no longer fit them all in the box that I had them in before, and I had to move them into a larger box. I did have them on my shelf for a period of time. I'm probably going to put them back on my shelf. I just need to find the energy to reorganize a shelf first. Out of these vinyl cats, 16 individuals are from the Prophecies Begin, but there are 22 unique minis total. 8 are from the New Prophecy, and 2 individuals are from the Power of 3, but there are 3 minis total. There are also 2 from Omen of the Stars, and 1 from the latest arc, the Starless Clan, and that's everybody. There were no cats from A Vision of Shadows, Dawn of the Clans, or A Broken Code as of set 5. There were 14 Tom individuals and 15 She-Cat individuals, but 5 Tom reprints and 2 She-Cat reprints, making it a little bit unbalanced overall. Obviously, there are mostly ThunderClan cats, so massively outnumbering the others that it's barely even worth it to go over. But, there's an obvious reason for this. For the first 4 arcs, we were firmly in ThunderClan perspectives, ignoring that one Flametail thing. But regardless, these guys change up the arc thing considerably. Not the gender or the clan thing, but they feature a majority of characters that aren't actually from the first arc. We also got Leopard Star and Tall Star, just in case you were missing the first arc a little bit. On the quality front, these guys are pretty good. There's no real mistakes, and the seams are a bit sharp, but otherwise average, and a couple cats like Shadowsight have cheek dents, but the general manufacturing errors are super minimal. My Shadowsight was the worst off, coming out with the same black grease on him that my Ivy Pool did, leaving a bit of a stain on his lower lip. This might have been partially on me because I did not open these guys immediately. I opened them when I filmed last week, and not recently. If I had opened them as soon as I got them and then washed Shadowsight free of grease then, he probably wouldn't have a stain on his lip right now. Something all of these figures do have, unfortunately, is the bubble mouth that was introduced recently. This means that if you turn any of them over, they will have a bit of a Rankin Bass old man face on the bottom, which looks very awkward when you compare it with cuter, smoother faces of the past. That said, the top side of the mini on these works better with the bubble than previous sets did, especially Shadowsight, whose longer mouth kind of takes up the whole muzzle area and makes it look like a real muzzle, unlike other figures where it just kind of looks like elderly skin sagging. The difference here is really obvious when you compare Shadowsight, whose mouth line completes the whole muzzle, to his mother Dovewing, whose mouth line stops just short of doing so. This bubble looks the worst on characters like Hollyleaf, who do not have markings outlining their muzzle area. It just kind of juts right out like a teddy bear and makes it its own line in a way. So if we're looking at it from a scale of looks like Homer Simpson to looks the least like Homer Simpson, cats like Hollyleaf are very unfortunately strictly in the looks like Homer Simpson camp. Not to be always comparing these minis to random cartoon characters, it's just the best way to get my point across. But seeing as I'm already sitting here talking about individuals, let's get started. Leopard Star and Tall Star both look pretty good. While recognizing Tall Star is pretty easy, as long as it's a short-haired black and white cat, it can really only go to Tall Star or Swiftpaw, but he does look like a commonly accepted Tall Star. He lacks the Wayne Arts noticeable back cloud, but I've never really been a lover or a hater of the cloud. I feel nothing. He does in fact have a nice long tail, which is a good detail that I'm glad was remembered regardless of his name here. Although, because of where the color cuts off, it can be hard to tell this bit is actually his tail and not his leg at certain angles. Color-wise, he looks pretty good too. His white face scars are a bit strange, but I'd rather that than a color that blends with his nose. Overall, he's very torn up, with barely any ears left, and scars all over him. I don't too much mind, but it's not really the picture of Tall Star I think most people have. His mouth seems to go all the way across his bubble muzzle as well, which makes him look pretty good from above. And the way the color of his face goes all the way along the edge of said muzzle helps hide the old man's skin sagging. So overall, Tall Star looks pretty great. He does have those unfortunate nose lines though. They're not as bad as it is on some other characters like Leafpool though. I can't ignore these ones. Leopard Star is excellent. You can tell that it's Leopard Star right away. Here are the 2 reasons why you can tell it's Leopard Star. 1, she has leopard spots on her front, not just on her back, like more unfortunate characters like Ashfur. And she has short hair, as she's commonly depicted, unlike more unfortunate characters like Ashfur. So you know, right away, this is Leopard Star, and that's good. Or at least you know right away this is Leopard Star until the next set of minis releases and one of them looks way too much like Leopard Star. Anyway, there are a few little weirdnesses with her, like the way that her stripes don't quite line up between the front and the back, in a way that's way more noticeable than on other minis, but I'd say overall Leopard Star looks good. It's unfortunate she was born in the bubble mouth generation, but because of the markings framing it, it doesn't really look so bad from above. That said, if flipped over, the old man mouth is pretty bad on Leopard Star, but we're not going to look at the old man mouth because we're not going to look at Leopard Star straight on. We're going to look at her from above and she looks great. The fully closed, colored nose bridge looks pretty good compared to the lines the other figures have, and gives her nose a more cat-like form. I like it. Basically, Leopard Star looks great, as long as you're looking at her from the front and above, and Leopard Star's colors overall look good together pretty much in any lighting, which is more than I can say for some of the other figures. I think both of these characters, Leopard Star and Tall Star, were very needed additions, and both were done pretty well, so I'm glad to have them. Next up, we have Hollyleaf and Lionblaze. Hollyleaf specifically was extremely missing in the last few sets, which seems odd to me. I always assumed Hollyleaf, although not my type of character, to be overwhelmingly popular in the Warrior Cats fandom. Lionblaze, honestly not so much, but I still wanted him, so I'm glad to see him here. As far as recognizability goes, we don't really have to worry about that. Any black cat with green eyes is Hollyleaf. You might notice that she doesn't have any berries on her ear. This is because our fandom just made that one up a long time ago. In the book, she does not wear holly berries around. And no, it wasn't holly berries that she tried to poison Leafpool with, although they are minorly toxic to mammals. That would have been Yew, which is also red, but it doesn't match her name. Recognizability aside, I am surprised to find her in Ashfur's pose. I guess there's some parallel they're going for here, or maybe it was just easy to use a already fluffy base for Hollyleaf. But it is kind of weird, and I don't think most of the people who are big fans of Hollyleaf are really thinking that what they want is an evil, scheming Hollyleaf. I'm sorry to say it, but overall she's just a little ugly. Not that Hollyleaf can't be a bit ugly. I just know that everybody wants their favorite characters to look good, and she's a little lacking. That said, her eyes look okay, and that's good. There's 2 things making her look a bit off, and those are her colors and the bubble mouth. With no markings to frame the bubble mouth, it looks obvious on the face, and again gives the Homer Simpson effect where it just kind of sticks out. And with the scars and nose being so close in color to her fur, they just don't stand out very well. I wish her scars were a bit lighter and her nose and eye corners were a bit darker. In dimly lit spaces, the Hollyleaf mini probably looks like a floating pair of eyes. And I don't mind the lack of detail, obviously, but the detail that is there just needs a bit more contrast. Lionblaze, meanwhile, passes as Lionblaze. Recognizing Lionblaze as a character is something we don't really have a science for in the Warrior Cats fandom. See, Lionblaze is golden, first of all, which gives us a very large color spread from various artists. More on that later. While the word blaze could have ended up implying he has some sort of white spot on his face, forehead, or chest, but the Warrior Cats fandom didn't really take that route and just tends to draw him, well, any which way. Book covers tend to make him yellow or orange yellow, official resources make him yellow or orange yellow, and this mini wave makes him, Now there's nothing wrong with the shapes here. I like the fuzz, I like how he has a bigger nose than a lot of the other minis, I like his stripe shapes and his angry little creases between his eyes, and the way that his orange stripes make winged eyeliner if you manage to notice them. But these colors are ugly together, that's just plain and simple. You might not be able to tell depending on how my camera took in these hues, but this is a desaturated yellow color, skewed much closer to yellow than to orange. This is a slightly more saturated orange color of about the same brightness, but skewed closer to orange. And these colors look terrible next to each other. The bubble mouth is framed okay, it's a lot less obvious than it is on a character like Hollyleaf. Overall, I would say that Lionblaze and Hollyleaf are fine. They were necessary figures to make, and I would like them a lot if Lionblaze was just colored in a little bit more professionally. The last set this time around is Shadowsight and Dovewing, and oh my gosh, Dovewing! A Dovewing for me! And you might go, oh, that Dovewing is scary, and yes she is, but this is okay just for Dovewing. She's not listening. She's looking at ShadowClan right now. She's listening to the WindClan announcement. She's checking if the tribe has any news. Her staring blankly 5,000 meters ahead is fine. Unfortunately, there is a second issue with her eyes that I can't help but talk about here. And I am not talking about the eye color. The problem is the eye shines. The one on the left here, her right, is touching the edge and looks very natural and normal. But this one on the other side is floating towards the middle, making this eye considerably more scary than the other eye and making it look like, instead of looking straight ahead, Dovewing is looking in two different directions entirely. I'm not really sure how this even happens, to be honest with you. Like, wouldn't you have a second eye look almost identical to the first eye? Her bubble mouth is also just short of being a little bit more normal looking. She's got a very, very broad smile, and this would be good if it covered the whole bump like it does on her son, but it stops just short of covering the whole bubble, and instead looks a little bit odd for being a bit too large, and makes the bubble more obvious. Dovewing also looks a bit deceptively tall. Next to a mini from this set, she actually isn't that much taller, but next to an older mini, she's quite a bit taller, and I do wonder if that's just the minis getting bigger with time. I'll have to look into that soon. As far as Dovewing's colors and markings go, it's all fine. Of course, I'm glad she has green eyes, but that's only because she's had green eyes in the books consistently for the past decade. But even if she didn't, it wouldn't be as massive a blow as when Ashfur got the wrong eye color during an arc where his eye color was a plot point. At this point, I might have to start keeping a tally of every time the bad Ashfur design comes up in one of these. If the Cloudtail mini is a low bar in how ugly it is, the Ashfur mini is a low bar in how inaccurate it is. Dovewing also has a few scars that look a bit strange because they're not colored in with any real color at all. She's also got a lot of counter shading, and I guess I understand that they didn't really want to make her look fully gray, but this does make me worry about the future for Bristlefrost. See, often to stay accurate, but not ruin the character design by making it a tortoiseshell or a tabby, people will give Bristlefrost counter shading. So it kind of makes me wonder what Bristlefrost is going to look like if she gets a mini. Because if it also includes counter shading like this, it might actually be really hard to tell her apart from Dovewing. And yes, haha, I know, this is assuming that the Bristlefrost mini isn't just an empty box. But seeing as we do have quite a few solid gray protagonists who don't have minis yet, like Twig Branch and Bristlefrost and Greywing and Clear Sky, I'd like at least one of them to actually be a solid gray cat like we get all of these solid black cats. Please respect the minimalist simplicity of a solid gray cat. But I like this Dovewing fine. She's silly. Now I'm going to change my tune entirely. I love this Shadowsight. This Shadowsight is fantastic. He's all banged up with scars everywhere, which, unlike some of the other minis that have scars for seemingly no reason or no battle that you can really remember, Shadowsight is kind of messed up. He has all sorts of stuff all over him, probably from getting beat up so many times and struck by lightning. So Shadowsight looking like he's already been chewed on by the dog is pretty accurate. So he's all banged up, he's got scars everywhere, a messed up ear, and a much, much more fandom depiction than the book's depictions. And in this particular case, that is great. In the books, Shadowsight is just a gray tabby. His stripes are mentioned to be dark like his father's, and otherwise he's described as resembling his mother Dovewing, when his sisters do not. But the fandom depictions of Shadowsight don't really avoid any of these things, they just amplify them. It makes him a much darker gray, and I see people give him red eyes sometimes, and even a smoke appearance. And now you might think, Moonkitty, you hate those torty Bristlefrosts, why do you like Fanon Shadowsight? And that's an easy question to answer. Shadowsight's Fanon design doesn't step on any toes, it doesn't step on canon. Red is a perfectly acceptable exaggeration of amber because we don't actually have red-eyed cats in Warriors. The darker gray overall design doesn't stop him from being a gray tabby. It's well within the bounds of accepted descriptions, so I really like this Shadowsight mini. I will say that his eyes are definitely a very orange color in real life and can't really be mistaken for red, but it still feels inspired. Also, because the muzzle lines go all the way across the design like the last gray stripe, Shadowsight is the one figure in this set whose mouth looks normal and even cute. He's unquestionably the best figure in this set. Something I really appreciate about this guy is that even though they defined his nose bridge, they did not put dug lines down the side of it, making it so that there's no mistake like we saw on Leafpool's nose in the past. Unfortunately, despite how much I like him, Shadowsight is the mini that I got in the worst quality. He had black grease on him that I had to wash off with a towel, he had a dent in the plastic on his cheek, but that stuff is absolutely nothing compared to some of the mistakes I've seen or had in some of the other minis. Like, this guy is still, like, if he was in set 2, he would probably be the best quality mini in that set. So he's doing fine. These bubble mouths that all of these figures have might be a slightly worse design philosophy than the older figures had, but the manufacturer is seemingly making them at a higher quality overall, so what's the trade-off here? Or is that even a trade-off? I don't know. My feelings on this set are pretty positive, especially compared to the last set. The bubble mouths are ugly and unfortunate, especially when they're put next to really cute mouths like the original Ravenpaw and Brightheart and Scrollflight, but these are better than set 5. They also sit up and stand really well. They do not need any support whatsoever. They're good models for sitting around your desk without falling over, which is more than I'm going to be able to say for set 7. Now, next time I will go over who we need and what we're missing, and that'll probably be 1 or 2 videos in the future, but for this one I do want to quick talk about how the minis have handled coat colors, because if you remember, I really like the cat coat colors in Warrior Cats. They're really interesting to me from a canon perspective. Warrior Cats come in a lot of colors that real cats don't come in, or at the very least, if there is any approximation, those are colors that need lots of recessive genes and careful planning and careful breeding to actually come out in a cat. And obviously the Warrior Cats are not doing this. But as I kind of thought might happen, there isn't really consistency between colors between 2 minis, even if they have the same color description. In real cats, Golden can refer to a couple different coat types. Usually it's used for something that's also called sunshine in Siberians and British Shorthairs, but it's also been used as an alternate word for ruddy in some ticked breeds. It's also been used to describe ticked cats that are tortoiseshells, and also just normal ginger cats. So words mean nothing in real life, and they mean nothing in Warrior Cats. But this is especially true for the Warrior Cats minis, as Leopardstar, Lionblaze, and Mothwing, 3 cats all called Golden in the books, are also 3 completely different colors. And I think that's really interesting just because if I were going about designing a toy line based on Warrior Cats, I would probably try to keep that thing on my mind, like, this is a golden cat, how did I draw the golden cats before? Lionblaze's base is what a human might call golden when picking a paint color for their wall with orange stripes. Mothwing is orange with reddish-brown stripes. Leopardstar is a light brown with dark brown stripes. The closest cat to the way that the Warrior Cats website seems to typically depict golden is Mapleshade, who honestly is way too yellow for a cat with maple in their name. And this isn't me complaining, it's just me, looking a bit. I don't care what color these cats are as long as I can tell who they are, but it's interesting to me between, the lack of real rules and the lack of real consistency between these characters. A lot of them don't look the way they look in canon, and a lot of them are taking a lot of strange artistic liberties. There's some disconnect and surprise with how much these incorporate or completely ignore canon and fanon descriptions, which can actually be a good surprise when it comes to cats like Shadowsight. But the real joy of mini set Wave 6 is that you can do this. Ashfur, I had no idea you were still upset. Upset? I'm not upset. You have no idea, huh?